Hello and welcome back to the Scale Building Cafe, and welcome to another chat video. Now, right, the subject of this video is going to be about pre-shading. And lots of people pre-shade and they get on with it. That's fine, you know, whatever. I used to do pre-shading as well. But a long time ago, I gave up on it. And I gave up on it for a number of reasons. I really don't like pre-shading because I think if you look at aeroplanes, they don't have dark shadows, wide dark shadows around all the surface detail. They just don't. And pre-shading gives you that. It's too uniform over the entire airframe. Some models I've seen are I just don't like the result at all. So that's really, for me, that's the main reason is it just doesn't look realistic, and that's what I'm always trying to do in my models. I'm always trying to make a model look as realistic as I possibly can. And pre-shaded models just, for me, just don't do that. They just don't look right. And it's just my opinion. The other main reason I don't like pre-shading is I think it's actually really quite difficult. And when I'm talking about pre-shading, what I'm doing, what I really mean is just painting a dark colour such as black along all the panel lines and then putting your top coat over that. It can work where people do sort of marbling coats, but I'll come on to that later. Right, let's say you've got a model and you've pre-shaded it and now you're putting the camouflage. Let's say it's a two-tone camouflage, something like a Spitfire, for example. So you're going to put normally the lighter colour down first. So let's say you're going to put the ocean grey down, even though it's similar. Let's just say you're going to put the ocean grey down. You spray the ocean grey in thin coats, and you're slowly building up the opacity of the paint, but you can still see the pre-shading underneath. It's a very, very fine line between not enough top coat and you can, oh, there's a little fly, not enough top coat, so the pre-shading is too stark, to then doing one or two too many coats and it's all gone and all your time and effort is wasted. So that's point number one. Point number two, you're now going to do the dark green. So what you do is you either mask or you freehand the dark green. But where the dark green is going to overlap the ocean grey is you're not going to see any pre-shading. So you're going to have sort of where the camouflage demarcation is you're not going to get that effect. So it's going to look a bit weird. Another thing what people do is they tend to pre-shade rivet lines as well, if there is rivet lines on that particular model. So let's, you know, large, like a 1/24th scale Airfix kit, for example, or an Edward kit. So what they tend to do is draw black or dark lines over the rivet lines, which means when they put the camouflage down, it's like a grid pattern. And it looks weird, in my opinion. It just looks weird. It doesn't look real at all. So that's another downside to it. If it's a single colour, people say, well, I'm doing it to break up the colour. And that's valid. But again, for, you know, all right, you don't have the problem of the demarcation, but or maybe you do on the demarcation, say the lower fuselage. For example, you know, this is the Clearprop H75N, and you know the demarcation of the lower undersurf colour and the top camouflage here. I mean, this would be even worse because it's 3 colours on the top. From my previous point, again around there you're not going to get any pre-shading. So that's my two sort of arguments against pre-shading, if you like. One, it looks, in my opinion, not realistic at all, to the point it can look a bit silly. And point number 2, it's very hard to time that sort of thin coat correctly between not enough and then too much, and all your effort's wasted. I much prefer post shading. You get much more control. So I will lay the colour down. I will then tint the base colour. Normally a little bit lighter first, and I will add, you know, normally a white or a buff. If it's a green, I'll add buff or flesh or yellow, because if you add white to green, it can look a little bit chalky, I think. And then I go in and I thin it more. I then go in and I'll go along panel lines with that lighter tone, and I'll do a little bit of marbling or cloud pattern over the top. I'll then do a darker version of the base colour, and I'll repeat that. The lighter colour over panel lines, I think it's almost like if you look at the real thing, the light will catch panel lines. Panel lines tend to be a little bit higher than the rest of the panel, so they catch the light a little bit more. And actually, the panel line, the light even might catch the edge of the panel. So I think it gives a much more realistic effect. I tend to over-exaggerate things when I'm doing the base coat, because the subsequent varnish layers and then weathering layers will tone things down a little bit. I did try those splatter masks and spraying it through, but I tried it, I didn't like it. I find them too hard-edged. I much prefer trying to do a little bit of marbling or cloud pattern freehand. I think it gives a softer, more natural effect. I keep looking down here because I'm looking at that H75N because I've done exactly that on it. So that is why I'm a massive advocate for post shading, because I think it's more realistic. You know, it's like the anti pre-shading. It's more realistic, I think, and it's much easier to control and much easier to do. And if the contrast is a little bit too much, you just put a little bit of base coat in and sort of blend it in. So that's the case against pre-shading the panel lines. Now, kind of going on from that, I suppose, is using a black undercoat. Some people use a black undercoat and then, which is fine, and then we'll try and do like a translucent mottling over the top. So they're kind of pre-shading, but using mottling over the entire thing rather than just the panel lines. And again, I think that doesn't really work. It can work over a grey camouflage. You know, for example, a modern jet, especially US Navy, it can work. But I've seen people who don't put enough paint down, and you can see the black coming through, you know, on browns and greens especially, and it just looks unfinished, and it just looks it shifts the tone of the paint. It just looks all wrong. And for me, it just doesn't work. Where it's sort of less bad is people will do like a black undercoat, and then in a light tone, white or yellow, buff, whatever, they'll do a marbling coat over the entire thing, and then they'll put the camouflage over the top of that in thin layers. That can produce okay results, but again, I refer you to the comment right at the start of the video. That takes a hell of a lot of time, and then one pass too many and it's gone. And over the camouflage demarcation, it's gone. So you just don't get that control with it, I don't think. I mean, it looks better, I will admit, it looks better than just over the black undercoat and their translucent paint. But yeah, it still can look a bit odd in my opinion. And here's the nub of it, and this goes for really all of my chat videos about this kind of thing. At the end of the day, it's your model, and if that's what you like to do, then crack on, you know. And if you're pleased with the result at the end of the day, fantastic. That's why we do this thing, is because we like looking at our end results. I mean, I keep looking over at my Clearprop H75N, which I've just finished today, and I love this thing. I've loved how it's turned out. I'm really, really, really pleased with it. It's a beautiful kit, and I'm really pleased with my efforts on it and how it's turned out. That is the ultimate aim of making any model, is that. I just thought I'd throw my opinion out on pre-shading out there. Some of you may find it useful. Some of you may want to, maybe if you do pre-shading, you may want to, you know, maybe modify your technique. Try it how other people do it. You may be happy just sticking with it. I quite often experiment when I'm doing modelling. I'll see a technique that I've seen online or in a magazine or something, and I'll give it a go. I'm always trying things. I mean, this is how I started doing the oil dot weathering. I saw it in the arm. I went through an armour modelling phase. I saw Mick Jimenez's videos. I did it in my armour modelling, and then a light bulb went off above my head, and I did it on aeroplane modelling, and then I evolved my technique for oil dot weathering and tailored it, but you know, because that obviously grew out the armour modelling fraternity. I tailored it and modified it for the aeroplanes, because I think you have to be a little bit more subtle with aeroplanes, and I think it you know, I'm very pleased with that. And I don't always do the oil dot weathering now. I did on that one. I don't always do it, but yeah, I do enjoy doing it. There we go. Right, I don't know why I started talking about oil dot weathering, but there we are. Right, I'll leave it there. Be interesting to hear your thoughts on pre-shading. I'm sure some of you pre-shade and love it. I'm sure some of you are like me, think it really is a bit of a waste of time. It's not that realistic, but it'll be interesting to hear your thoughts. And as Mrs. Merton used to say, let's have a heated debate. But let's not have a heated debate. Let's just have a normal debate like grown-ups. And we can, if we've got differing opinions, that's absolutely fine. We're allowed to have those. There we are. I'll leave it there. Yeah, I'll see you on the next one. If you've got any ideas for these chat topics, then yeah, then give me a shout. All right. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye-bye.